Hey everybody, we've got an exciting video for you today. If you've been following this channel for any length of time, you'll know that I have been putting out expository Bible studies to kind of help people learn how to study their Bibles. And we've been walking through several chapters in the book of Proverbs. I most recently put out a video exploring Proverbs chapter 3, verses 1 through 4. Now, in that video, I received a comment from one of the viewers in our community asking a question, really two questions that I thought were fantastic questions. And when I was creating the video, I'm not generally thinking about going to these depths in my explanations of the video. I'm more or less extrapolating from the surface to help viewers learn how to Bible study for themselves, if you will. And I'm not going too deep into the ancient culture. I'm not going too deep into ancient worldviews. I'm not going too deep into a lot of things, somewhat intentionally. But if you'd like more of that in these expository videos, please let me know, and I'll keep that in mind moving forward. But since I received this question, and I thought it was a really great question, I wanted to dedicate this video to that question. Now, I did reply in the comment thread, but I think you'll agree that the best forms of communication are not necessarily in text form, verbal. And of course, if I can create a video using some software to break things down, I thought that would be more helpful. And so that's what's led me to create this video today. Now, let's begin by reading the question, and then I'm going to break it down and see what we can pull from it. The comment reads, "Great teaching. The Lord's promises are so encouraging. Question. Why in verse 4 does it say Elohim, and then in verse 5 use Jehovah? There's clearly a difference there. Also, the word for people in verse 4 is Adam, which means from H119, I'm assuming that's the Strong's Concordance reference there, meaning ruddy, a human being, an individual, or the species, mankind, is what human being is actually denoting. Now, these are brilliant questions, and I'd love to break it down into two questions. The first one I'm going to address, I think, is the simpler of the two. And then the second one is going to be a lot of fun because we're going to pull out some depth in that one. So let's just begin with question number 1. As I pull up Logos here. Why in verse 4 does it say Elohim and in verse 5 say Jehovah? There's clearly a difference there. Okay, so we've got verse 4 happening here. And in verse 5, they're noting this word here. All right, and we're going to look at that in just a minute. But for now, let's take a look. Then you will find favor and high regard with God. Okay, that's one of the words in question. And people. All right, let's break this down and look at our Hebrew real quick. With God, we've got Elohim and Adam, and then in verse 5 we have YHWH, Jehovah. All right, and so this is what's being referenced here. These are great observations. We're looking into the original languages, and that's always a wonderful practice. And so I admire this question so much. Now I'm going to begin to kind of answer the first question. Why does it say Elohim in verse 4 and Lord in verse 5? From a simple rhetoric and composition standpoint, okay, verses 1 through 4 are their own section, all right? And in verse 5, we begin a completely new and independent section where Jehovah is the subject, all right? So in verses 1 through 4, Jehovah isn't the subject here, all right? And this is going to make a little bit more sense when we can break down God in our second question that we're going to unpack. But for now, yes, there's a distinction. There is a difference between Elohim, God, right here, and Lord, all right, Jehovah. However, I wouldn't try to look too deeply in the fact that why have they used Elohim here and Jehovah here? Okay, this is very common. All right, we have throughout the whole Old Testament, But starting all the way back in the book of Genesis, we have within a narrative the interchanging of terminology to define the Father, God, Yahweh, right? There's narratives where it goes back and forth between the angel of the Lord to the Lord, which is YHWH, to Elohim, all right? And so even if verse 5 didn't start its own new independent section, it wouldn't be uncommon to go back and forth between Elohim and YHWH, referring to the same entity, individual, that is God the Father, okay? But that's not what's happening here. What's happening here is that we have this proverb broken up into sections. 1 through 4 is a section, and then we begin section number 2 of this chapter in verse 5. And it's a completely new section that YHWH is the subject, and it's not referring back to verses 1 through 4. So that's just simple rhetoric and composition, how writers write and tactics they use and ways they will lay out their writings and so on and so forth. Okay, so that is why there's a distinction there. And I believe that's probably the most important distinction for this particular text. Now, question number 2. The word for people, okay, in verse 4 is Adam, which means ready, mankind, so on and so forth. And so they're asking, what is the case here? Why is it saying that? What does that mean? And here's really why I think the commentator's notice of Elohim is actually more important. I think it's more important that we know Elohim in correlation with Adam than it is important to notice Elohim in correlation with Jehovah. And here's why. In the Hebrew, we have 2 words here, Elohim and Adam, that the subject will find favor with, assuming they let loyalty and faithfulness, right, guide them. They etch it into their heart. So chesed and emet. We talked about this at a little bit more depth in my breakdown of these chapters. Go take a look at that if you're interested. So the subject's going to find favor with Elohim and Adam. Now we can take this and understand it in 2 primary ways. First is really the surface level English, that the subject, the one being chesed and emet, will find favor with God. That is the singular reference to Jehovah and all of mankind, okay? Because Adam means mankind. So what I want to note is even just from the Strong's, I'm assuming that's what the commentator pulled from, they noticed that Adam is referring to the species of mankind. It's not just referring to a single man. So here we have, from interpretation number 1, a singular Elohim with a entire species. We have Elohim and then the entire species. So we have a singular with an entire species. Well, that's a bit odd, okay? And that leads me into our second way of understanding this. And that's from the worldview of the author and the audience. And that is the subject, the one that is walking in chesed and emet, will find favor with 2 broad groups of creation, 2 species. All right, so what you need to understand about Elohim is how the ancient Near Eastern world understood Elohim. Okay, Elohim did not refer solely to Jehovah. Elohim referred to a species or a creation that resided in the spirit realm, the unseen realm, while Adam referred to a creation or a species that inhabited and resided in the material realm, that is humankind. Okay, so what is Adam? What is people? You will find favor with the human species, all humans, all right? It's encompassing a broad group of people. What is Elohim? All right, again, the author, in my opinion, is he suggesting you're going to find favor with all Elohims. That includes the Elohim above all Elohims, okay? But it's not limited to the Elohim above Elohims, Jehovah. It's all Elohims. Well, Lee, that's a little odd? Are you suggesting why would we actually even need favor with all of the Elohims? Or at least what was the mindset of the author and the audience here that they would desire favor with Elohim, assuming this is correct, that Elohim refers to a broader species of created beings that inhabit that realm? Well, let's take a look here at Psalm 82. Okay, and I want to begin here. God stands in the divine assembly. He pronounces judgment among the gods. What is this word? Gods. Let's pull it up just quickly here. Divine assembly among the gods. Elohim. Okay? So he's pronouncing judgment among the Elohim. Well, how do we know this is plural? Well, he stands in the midst of the divine assembly. He pronounces judgment among. All right? He stands in the midst and among. You don't do that in a singular context. It's plural. So not only that, the I am at the end of this word is kind of like the English S. It makes something plural in many cases. So Elohim is used in a singular sense, oftentimes throughout Scripture, but it's kind of like our word for sheep. We can use sheep in a singular sense and a plural sense. And depending on the words around that will depend on if sheep is singular or plural. The sheep is coming means sheep is singular. The sheep are coming means the sheep is plural. Same with Hebrew. All right, we have the words surrounding Elohim here that tells us Elohim is plural. Okay, let's continue on. God, the creator and the supreme ruler of all beings in both realms, is saying, how long will you judge unjustly and show partiality to the wicked? Provide justice for the needy and the fatherless. Uphold the rights of the oppressed and the destitute. Rescue the poor and the needy. Save them from the power of the wicked. They do not know or understand. They wander in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are shaken. Okay, so here what we need to know real quickly is that this is what the Elohim are supposed to be doing in the earth. So this was the worldview and the understanding of the author and the audience of Proverbs 3. They understood that Elohim were actively involved in their world, and they were supposed to be acting as agents on behalf of God, all right, in the earth, doing these things that I've highlighted here. Now watch this, verse 6. You are gods, Elohim. You are all sons of the Most High, right? Because Jehovah is the God of gods. He is the supreme, right? However, verse 7, you will die like humans. Now, many have argued that the divine council here and the Elohim here is the Trinity. Well, the problem with that is, does the Trinity die like humans? No. But God, the Most High, is rendering this judgment upon these sons of God, these sons of the Most High. All right, and he's saying, rise up, God, judge the earth, for all the nations belong to you. Okay, now let's look again in Deuteronomy 32 at another example here. Remember the days of old, consider the years of many generations. Ask your father, and he will show you your elders, and they will tell you. Watch this. When the Most High gave to the nations their inheritance, when he divided mankind and he fixed the borders of the peoples, this is talking about Babel, according to the number of the sons of God. Now, the Masoretic text will have sons of Israel, while the Dead Sea Scrolls and Septuagint do not. The Dead Sea Scrolls actually has B'nai Elohim, sons of God. Now, why can't this be sons of Israel? Why is the Masoretic text eluding us? Well, for two reasons. One, down here in verse 9, it says, but the Lord's portion is his people Jacob. Who's that? Israel. So what he's saying is he divided up the borders of the people according to the sons of Israel, but yet Israel is the Lord's nation, the Lord's people, while the rest are not. Okay, well, that's a contradiction that doesn't really fit. Secondly, Israel did not exist at the time of this narrative. When he divided mankind, fixed the borders of the people, Israel didn't exist. This was Babel. This was pre-Abraham when this happened. So he couldn't have fixed the borders according to the number of the sons of Israel, because when he divided mankind in the borders of the people, the sons of Israel didn't exist. Okay, so this was this is what's happening at Babel, where he divides the nations up and he gives them to be governed and stewarded by Elohim, and they clearly rebelled, okay? And so this is the mindset and the worldview of the author here in Proverbs chapter 3. So what I think is most likely being said here by the author is that if you keep chesed and emet tied around your neck and written on the tablets of your heart, you will find favor and high regard with Elohim and Adam, two entire species, not just Jehovah. Even though that's true, it's not limited to Jehovah, okay, though it includes him, and the entire race of humankind, okay? Now, why is that important? Well, let's take a look at Hebrews chapter 1, verse 13 and 14 to give us some insight. Now, to which of the angels has he ever said, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool? Are they the angelos, the malach, messengers, all right? That's just a job description, that word. It's not a species. Angels isn't a species. It's a role or a function that certain Elohim have, depending on where they are in the hierarchy, okay? Are they not all ministering spirits sent out to serve those who are going to inherit salvation? Okay, so Elohim, especially the malach and the angelos, are ministering spirits. Their role and their function are to serve those who inherit salvation. This means that they're actively involved with our lives. And the ancient writer and readers would have understood that in their worldview. So they want to have favor with these Elohim because they're actively involved with the affairs of humankind. Now, you're saying, well, Lee, this is out of context. This is for those who are going to inherit salvation. Yes. Back in Proverbs chapter 3, what covenant are we in during that time? The covenant of Sinai, the old covenant. In that covenant, who are the ones inheriting salvation? Israel, right? So ministering spirits, their role doesn't change. They were still serving those who were to inherit salvation. That was just limited to Israel at the time the Proverbs were written. Now it's expanded to anyone in covenant with Christ. We have a new covenant that's made with Christ. So I hope that this has brought out the depths of what's going on in Proverbs 3, 4, and 5. Thank you so much for this question. It was brilliant, and I hope that this video has been insightful for you. If you liked it, please like it, share it, leave more comments. I would love to take comments such as the one we've examined here today and do more of this. So if you have questions, please leave them, and I will try my best to make videos like this created just based on your questions. So yeah, if you found this valuable, please consider liking. Really helps out the channel, helps the gospel go forth. Please consider commenting and subscribing and sharing. Those things help as well. But as always, until next time, God bless.